Hello again guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoyed that little intro showing off the new burning blue design scenery of Farnborough Airport. As you can see, we are currently sat on the ground at Farnborough in the Aerosoft CRJ, ready to take it for a flight once again. This morning we're operating a private charter from Farnborough over to Belfast. We'll be departing off runway 06 here at Farnborough, flying the Hazel 2 Lima departure and heading north up towards Ireland. The weather out of here this morning is a little bit chilly but otherwise nice. The cloud base is pretty low going into Belfast, so that might make the ILS rather marginal. Anyway, for the flight today we'll ultimately be cruising at flight level 400. We've only got a few passengers on board and a couple of bags, so the aircraft is very lightly loaded. Altogether we'll be lifting a block fuel of just under 3.5 tonnes. As always guys, I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you have any comments or questions for me, please leave them down in the comments section below. But now let's get ourselves sat down in the cockpit of the CRJ and we'll start getting the aircraft set up for the departure. So welcome once again to the cockpit of the Aerosoft CRJ. This time we're in the 550 and we're currently on the ground at the rather excellent burning blue designs Farnborough. Anyway, as you can see, we just got on board the aircraft, so we'll run through a bit of an abbreviated cockpit setup, get the aircraft ready to go. So first thing we'll do, we'll start aligning the IRSs. They're obviously going to take a little bit of time to align. So we'll initialise the position based on the GNSS1 position. We can copy that. And we can put that in the set position field. So the RSs now are aligning. We'll carry on with our checks. So the fuel pumps are off. Fuel. We have 3.5 tonnes on board, which is what we need according to the flight plan today. APU is on. Hydraulics. So we'll set the 3B pump on. Hydraulics are on and auto. For the flight controls, we'll get the stab trims on now, the Mac trim as well. And we'll engage the yaw damper. Landing elevation. So the landing elevation here at Farnborough is 238 feet, so we'll set that up in the cabin pressurization system. It is a little bit fiddly to set as you can't directly see the value whilst you're actually tuning it, but there's 220 feet, so that is set. Altimeters. So current QNH is 1024. We'll set that on the primary altimeters. So we have 1024 set and cross-checked. CDU, so we can start our setup now of the CDU. Just pause my track IR while we do that. So we've already started aligning the IRs. We'll go to flight plan. The flight today is from Farnborough, Echo Golf Lima Foxtrot, over to Aldergrove, or Belfast, which is Echo Golf Alpha Alpha. Alternate today is Dublin, Echo India Delta Whiskey. And we don't have a call sign today, so we'll just use our registration, which is Golf India Tango Bravo Sierra. So that's all checked, we can execute that. For the departure this morning, we're using runway 06 here at Farnborough, and it'll be the Hazel 2 Lima departure. So we can enter that and execute. We'll next start building up the flight plan itself. I'll warn you now, it is a little bit of a long flight plan routing, so it might take a while to get through the entire setup. Anyway, from position Hazel, we're taking the Lima 620 airway out towards Southampton. After Southampton, it's the Quebec 41 out towards waypoint Silver. After Silver, it's Uniform Mike 605 to the Daventry VOR. Next, it's direct to Sapco. So we have direct Sapco. After Sapco, it's the Uniform November 57. And that takes us out towards the Trent VOR. Then it'll be the Uniform Lima 28. That'll take us out towards Rodol. Then it'll be the upper Mike 6.5. And that'll take us out towards waypoint 10 so. Then it'll be Lima 603. And that'll be out towards waypoint Remsi. And then it'll be the Mike 147. And that's out towards waypoint Robop. After Robot, we're going to track direct to Blacker, which is Bravo Lima Alpha Charlie Alpha. So that's direct Blacker. We'll execute all of that. And then for the arrival this morning into Belfast, we're going to take the ILS runway 25. We'll take the Zulu, just with vectors for now, so we can execute that. And then we'll have a quick flick through the flight plan to make sure that the legs are correct.
Rescue 21 and 15, good morning. We may start with the active. Proceed to the right onto runway 16, close short for 6 way.
So that all looks good, and we'll just join up the ILS from waypoint Blacker. So we have Blacker to India Alpha Golf 94. We can execute that. So the flight plan is now set up. We can set up the performance. So we have a 0 fuel weight this morning of 21,172 kilograms. We'll enter that in the 0 fuel weight field. And the fuel, as you can see, we have 3,555 kilos. And we can enter that in the fuel section. So that's filled out the FMS performance data. Cruising flight level initially today will be flight level 390. So we'll execute all of that. We can start our VNAV setup. So transition altitude here at Farnborough is 6,000 feet. Speeds look good for the climb, there's 6,000 feet. Next page we have a cruise speed of 300 knots, Mach decimal 74, cruising flight level 390. And then for the descent again 0.74, 290, 250 knots below 10. And we'll set the transition flight level later on, I'm not actually sure right now what that will be, into Aldergrove. So we've done the flight plan, we've done the departure and the arrival. We don't need any fixes at the moment, legs have been checked, we won't use a secondary flight plan today. VNAV has been set up. Radios, we'll just leave all of the radio aids auto-tuning for now. Performance, we'll use a flex takeoff today, so we'll set a flex temperature of 46 degrees. And by my reckoning, that is the CDU set up. So we'll take progress page on my side, take legs on the first officer side. So the CDU has been set up. The V speeds, we can set those up as well. So the target speed is 170 knots, and then we'll target V2 plus 10, 147. So we'll set that up on the autopilot.
Right, 5 Quebec uniform. 5 Quebec uniform, taxi left onto April 2, and then onto left on the boxes, no throttling 1.
So there we have 147 for the initial climb. VFTO is 170 knots, so we can set that.
Left April 2, left box, and hold short, so
It's going to take a little while to scroll through, as you can see.
Q21 and 15, monitor tower 118, that's the
And nearly there. So that's 170 knots set. And for the V speeds we have a V1 and a VR of 124.
Man Romeo Kilo Gulf Stream to pass on your right hand side shortly. Staying behind that traffic taxi Delta Sierra and hold short.
So it's 124 for V1. And we'll set 124 for VR as well. And V2 is at 137 knots.
Flight spec uniform QNH 978, monitor tower 118, that's perfect. 978,
And we have 137 sets. So the V-speeds are set up. Lights. So we have the nav lights on. Emergency exit lights are armed. That's all we need on the lights for now. Chocks. We'll just check that the chocks have been removed, which they have. So emergency exit lights are on. Passenger signs can come on as well now. We have all of our fuel on board. And that's pretty much the preliminary setup complete. So just waiting on the IRs at the moment still to align. Just run through our before start checklist. So the passenger signs are on. Landing elevation is set. Altimeters are set. FMS has been checked and set. IRSs obviously still aligning at the moment. Radios and navigators, as I say, we'll leave them auto-tuning. So we'll carry out the takeoff briefing just while we wait for the IRSs to complete their alignment. So for the departure today, we're off runway 06 here at Farnborough, as I mentioned. We'll be flying the Hazel to Lima departure, which is straight ahead out to waypoint Lima Foxtrot Echo 1. And there'll be a right turn. Initially climbing up to an altitude of 3,000 feet, so we can set that up on the autopilot as well.
Turkish 5 Romeo Zulu, thank you. Contact tower 118.6. Bye-bye.
So we have 3,000 feet set, and the heading for the departure initially is a heading of 062, so we'll set that as well.
Turkish 5 Romeo Zulu, continue approach runway 28 left, you are number 1.
Maintaining 210 knots initially until we're outbound of waypoint Isilu. And thereafter we can accelerate up to 250 knots. We're supposed to maintain 3,000 feet all the way out to waypoint Hazel unless otherwise cleared by air traffic control. But we'll assume somewhere along the way that we'll get further climb and clearance to track outbound high speed. So that's the before start checklist complete. We'll assume that we are now cleared to start. So personal electronic devices are off. APU is on. Electrics. So AC system looks good. And the DC system looks good, so the electrics are checked. Takeoff data is set. Doors are all closed and locked. Beacon can come on. Fuel pumps can come on as well. And just checking the fuel quantity again to confirm, so 3.5 tonnes, which is what we want. Hydraulic pumps are on and auto. And the parking brake we'll leave on for the start. We'll just come in slightly on the range on the ND as well before we start the engines. So as I say, we are cleared for the start, so we'll start the right engine first, engaging the starter. And keeping an eye on the engine display, we're waiting for 20% N2 before we introduce fuel into the engine. We can get rid of the doors page again now. So just coming up on 20%, we can introduce fuel into the right engine. And bring the thrust lever back to the idle position. So we have a rise in ITT, N1 spooling up. Do have a decent fuel flow, and the oil pressure's coming up as well.
5, Quebec uniform ready for departure. Firm, Runner 5, Quebec uniform. Runner 5, Quebec uniform, runway inspection in progress, land of runway 28 left and wait. And runway 28 left and wait. Runner 5, Quebec uniform.
So just waiting for the engine to stabilise. That looks like we have a good start on the right engine. We'll start the left engine next. And same as before, we're waiting for 20% before we introduce fuel into the engine.
23, decimal 775, 23, 22 go.
So just coming up on 20%. We'll unlock the thrust lever, move it into the idle detent. And again we have our rise in fuel flow. N1 is spooling up. There's our rise in ITT. Oil pressure's coming up. And again waiting for the engine to stabilise around 21% N1. So we have two good starts. We'll run the after start checklist. So generators are both auto. Electrics. So again the AC system looks good. The engine driven generators are now powering the system. And DC electrics look good as well. Bleed valves are in the auto position. Packs are on. APU can come off. So we'll hit the stop switch. Just bring up the status page again. And you can see the APU is running down. So we'll cut the fuel and the power. Anti-ice is not required for the departure this morning, however we will turn on the probe heat and the windshield heats. So they're all on. And the nose wheel steering can go to armed. Taxi checklist, slats and flaps, so it's a flaps 8 takeoff this morning. So the flaps are set at 8. Currently running out. And we have flaps 8 set. We still have the yaw damper caution there on the system's display, so we'll just recycle the yaw dampers. That's cancelled the caution now. So slats and flaps are set. Flight controls. So we have full up, full down, neutral, full left, full right, and neutral. Checking the rudder, full left, full right, and neutral. So flight controls are checked. Trims. So coming down to the performance page, we need a trim of 5.8. which is set, and the trims are all in the green. It'll be interesting to see how the takeoff goes today. I've managed to figure out a more accurate way of entering the data in the performance section. The aircraft does now look to be correctly loaded and with a decent CFG, so we'll see if we still get the auto rotation on the takeoff. So trims are green and checked. Thrust reversers are armed. Flight instruments are checked. And the brake temperatures. It's first flight of the day, so the brakes shouldn't be hot, and indeed brake temperatures are all 0. So we are now ready for the taxi. It's all clear on the left and clear on the right. We'll turn the taxi light on. Park brake can come off. So I'll just pull up my taxi chart. Basically we just want to taxi straight ahead here. We're currently on the north apron. We'll taxi down through the west apron onto taxiway Foxtrot for a basically full length departure off runway 06. So again, all clear on the left. Hopefully as we go you get a little bit of a tour of the Burning Blue Designs Farnborough Airport, which as I say is really nicely done. It's by far their most expansive project to date. It's rather a huge piece of scenery, and it certainly includes lots of nice details, as you would have seen during the introduction. Not just the airport has been modelled, but also the surrounding features, which I think is a really nice touch. Just got a forklift truck cutting us up there. Yeah, I'm sure that many of you will be very familiar with Farnborough, since it's obviously rather famous for holding its yearly air shows. Anyway, had to jam on the brakes there for that forklift trap, so just coming up on the power again now to build up a little bit of speed. Try and keep the taxi time down.
Twilight 16, take the third right on the hotel 1 and then left onto runway 16, hold short of runway 28 left on runway 16.
So as I say, we just taxi through the west apron and we'll join on to taxiway Foxtrot. Foxtrot will take us all the way out to a full-length departure off runway 06. Just passing the main hangars now at Farnborough, as you can see. So we'll just wait until we get onto taxiway Foxtrot and then we'll carry out our departure brief.
Operation 5 continue left onto the runway 34 left for the reference to the hangar report.
And just easy on the brakes as we slow down for the corner. All clear on the left. And clear on the right. A little bit of a downhill segment here, so we might find ourselves accelerating rather quickly as we head down Foxtrot. As you can see, we're going to have a fairly significant right crosswind for the takeoff this morning. Be interesting again to see how the aircraft handles the crosswind. If you saw my last video, the CRJ currently is very susceptible to being upset by crosswinds. The wing tends to lift up very easily.
QR5 continue with the Sierra, the whiskey is hold short to left and 34 and you can call for a run on 34.
The windsock is actually showing a slight tailwind there on the runway, but the FMS is showing a slight headwind.
Gentlemen, the captain has advised that we are now cleared for takeoff.
Okay, cabin crew have advised the passengers. SimBrief gave us runway 06, so I assume that is the most accurate runway for the real world conditions right now. So for the departure brief, as I said, it's the Hazel 2 Lima departure off runway 06, which is straight ahead initially and then a right turn, 210 knots and climbing to an altitude of 3,000 feet, which we have set.
And fly low.
So we won't take the intersection, we'll take full length this morning. So continuing around on Foxtrot.
Rider 5 Quebec uniform, hello, identified, clear to B-pan, free speed, climb flight level 120.
We'll start running the before takeoff checklist. So lights and strobes, we'll assume we've already been given takeoff clearance, so the strobe lights and the landing lights can come on. Fuel cross flow, we'll select to manual. Start slowing the aircraft down for the holding points. Flight attendants have been advised. TCAS. So I haven't actually figured out yet in the aircraft how to set the TCAS or the transponder. I have had a little bit of a fiddle around with the options in the radio panel there, but personally I can't seem to get it working. I probably need to read the manual a little bit more closely there. Say it's been set, we don't need it for the flight today anyway. Radar and terrain will leave off as they're not functional in the aircraft currently. And CAS. So we have takeoff config OK, reversers are armed, manual crossflow, seatbelts and no smoking signs are on, just the recirc fan is off, so we'll turn that on now. So CAS is checked, we'll just box the CAS messages. And as I say, we are cleared for the takeoff, it's clear on final, clear on TCAS, lights are on.
B-pan, free speed, climb flight level 120 and F5 Quebec uniform. 0, frequency airborne 132, that's 580, target start 0935.
And again, all clear.
I said 74, read back correct, thank you. Toilet 16 QNH 0978, onto the tower 118, that's 165.
So we are now ready for the takeoff. It should be quite an interesting one to watch with that crosswind there. We have about 10 knots, about 40 degrees off the nose. Once again we'll get a chance to see whether the aircraft is particularly upset with crosswind, whether the wing gets lifted, whether we have to put in a significant amount of rudder to counter that. And similarly I have quite a good handle now, as I say, I think, on the aircraft loading. So we have the correct load, we have the correct CFG and we have the correct trim. It'll be interesting to see if we still get the auto rotation at VR. Finally, air traffic just gave us an amendment to our departure clearance, so we're now departing runway heading, climbing to an altitude of 5,000 feet. As I say, we are set to go, so we'll press our effective toga switch on the glare shield. We'll come up to 50% N1. Wait for the engines to stabilise and take off. So coming all the way up to toga on the thrust levers. There's toga. Thrust is set. In quite a bit of rudder now. The wind getting picked up, as you can see, through 100 knots. And coming off on V1, rotates. Once again the nose getting picked up all of its own accord there at VR. Anyway, with positive climb, gear up.
5 in here, 5 connecting from Monday.
And as you can see, with such a light loading today, we're climbing like absolutely nobody's business. We're doing over 6,000 feet a minute. Get the autopilot in, so we'll go speed, nav, correction heading, and autopilot. Come back to climb thrust. And we'll get the aircraft accelerating up to 210 knots. It's one to go. So we'll retract the flaps. And coming back off the thrust to maintain 210 knots for now. Now that we're not flying the departure, we don't necessarily need to maintain the speed restriction, but there's no point going high speed in the opposite direction of where we want to be going. And we'll say that air traffic has now cleared us direct to waypoint Hazel. So we'll make a right turn out towards Hazel. So it's heading, we're tracking into Hazel. And we'll assume that we have been given further climb all the way up to flight level 390.
9 Romeo Kilo, wind 3103 at 12, runway 28 left.
So once again we'll go speed. We'll come up to climb power.
5 Romeo Zulu, good morning, continue taxi, whiskey 1, hold short, runway 3.
So there's climb. We'll get the aircraft accelerating now up to 250 knots. And as you can see, we are tracking to Hazel, so we'll insert that in the flight plan. That gives us direct to Hazel. We'll execute that. And we'll come into nav. Passing through transition altitude, so we can set standard on the altimeters. And we have standard sets and cross-checked. Tracking nicely now inbound towards Hazel. And we'll run the climb checklist, so fuel crossflow can go back to auto. Bleeds and APU are set. Thrust reversers can come off. And the CAS is checked, so that's the climb checklist complete. Just coming up on 10,000 feet already. Once again, the aircraft is absolutely rocketing up. So landing lights can come off. We'll start accelerating now up to our climb speed of 300 knots.
Pilot 16, line up runway 28 left and wait. That's good,
Already up through 27,000 feet. You can see we're just leaving the tops of the cloud layer as well now. Looks like the aircraft's a little bit happier intercepting. Inbound towards Daventry now, which is good. We'll just wait a little bit longer till we're really through the tops of the clouds and we'll get the seatbelt signs off. And we do have a step climb today as well for the flight, so we maintain flight level 390 all the way up till waypoint Silver, and then it's climbing up to flight level 400 once we turn northwestbound. So we'll wait until we're overhead Daventry and then we'll climb up to flight level 400. You can see we're climbing at a constant Mach number now, 0.74, the speed slowly coming back there. And again, just brushing through the final tops of the clouds here. We'll leave the engine anti-ice on just a little bit longer to ensure we're completely clear of any icing conditions. Okay, pretty clear of the cloud now, so the engine anti-ice can come off. And we'll take the seatbelts off as well. Unfortunately, pretty significant headwind outbound today. As you can see, we've got about 67 knots straight on the nose on our way to Belfast. Obviously going to make the flight time a little bit longer. On that note, we'll bring up the flight plan information on the ND. And you can see we're currently showing 304 miles to Aldergrove, about 50-minute flight time, and expecting to arrive with around 2.2 tonnes of fuel into Belfast. Anyway, we'll just continue now up in the climb, up to initially, as I say, flight level 390, ultimately climbing up to flight level 400. A little bit overcast currently, so the views en route might not be too good. We'll head outside the aircraft, we'll take a look at some external shots along the way, and as usual, I'll come back to you just before top of descent as we set the aircraft up and brief for the arrival. So welcome back to the cockpit. As you can see, we're just heading inbound towards Belfast, currently about 5 minutes to run till top of descent. So we'll start getting the aircraft set up for the arrival. Running through the descent checklist, the landing elevation. So landing elevation in Belfast is 266 feet, we'll set 260 on the aircraft's pressurization system. And we have 260 set. Fuel. We currently have about 2.4 tonnes on board. The arrival figure now is somewhat erroneous, I'm not quite sure why. Expecting to arrive with just a little bit over 2 tonnes. The flight plan requires us to arrive into Belfast with around 1.2 tonnes for the diversion to Dublin, so we're going to have nearly an extra 30 minutes of fuel. So plenty of extra fuel up our sleeves. TCAS is set, radar is off, CAS is checked. Landing data will set now. and then we'll brief accordingly.
Turkish 5 Romeo Zulu from Hotel 1.
So for the landing, as I mentioned, we're coming in on ILS for runway 25, our waypoint Blacker, and then in for ILS 25 itself. Briefing the ILS, it's plate 11-2, ILS is 109.9. The aircraft should auto-tune that itself later on. And we're looking for an identifier of India Alpha Golf. Final approach course is 247. Aerodrome elevation, as we mentioned, is 268 feet. There's a profile check at 4.3 DME of 1690, and down to the Cat 1 MDA this morning of 468. So we'll set the MDA up now.
Take the second right on the Alpha Tango 4, give that 315 to Charlie. Turkish 5 Romeo Zulu in, read that, just copy that as well.
Set 470. It's close enough. And just approaching top of descent. We'll wait a little bit long before we get the aircraft coming down. If we do need to make a missed approach on the ILS, it's continued straight ahead initially, climbing to 3,000 feet. At 2,500 feet, we'll make a right turn towards the VOR. In terms of the terrain around Belfast, there's a little bit of high terrain out to the east-southeast. Around 1,800 feet is the maximum obstacle there. MSA for the approach is 3,500 feet. In terms of the weather, that's going to be quite interesting this morning. Basically, the weather is right on the Cat 1 ILS minima at the moment. We have a cloud base for around 200 feet, temperature 6 degrees, and the QNH is 1032. Visibility is good though, that's over 10 kilometres. We'll just get the aircraft coming down, we're just approaching our top of descent. So we'll come down to flight level 110 initially. We'll select VS. Ground speed's currently showing 439 knots. So we'll set 2,200 feet a minute for our rate of descent. So there's VS minus 2,200, 11,000 set on the PFD, and starting to come back on the thrust. So as I mentioned, landing on runway 25, no auto brake, no auto spoilers of course. We'll aim to use idle reverse. So landing on runway 25, we'll vacate off to the right. We'll probably have to vacate off via runway 17, but we'll try and get off at Bravo.
Flight 167 today, identified, turn right, Rulan, climb flight level 120. To Rulan, back climb flight level 120, flight level 16.
And just coming up on 11,000 feet, so we'll get that speed coming back. So there's 250 knots on the speed bug. We'll come back on the thrusts. Should be able to get back there without having to reduce our vertical speed here.
Flight 16, contact Dublin, 129.180, goodbye. 129.180, Twilight 16, good day.
And the aircraft should begin the turn over Blacker fairly shortly. You can already make out the Irish coast just off out to the left. And coming up on 10,000 feet. Get the landing lights on. Cycle the seatbelts.
Good morning, Twilight 16.
So speed's looking good, passing through 10,000. Aircraft doing a reasonable job with the turn so far.
Flight level 100, flight level 120, Twilight 16, morning, class flight level 16.
Certainly no overcast cloud layer at 200 feet there, but rather a pretty morning in the sim.
Tells you a little bit back there, thank you.
Speed's just dropping a little bit there, so coming back up on the thrusts.
Fire 774, continue on to the Foxes, Echo 114, speed 4,
And now the autopilot looks like it's going to start hunting around there to regain flight plan track. The autopilot in the aircraft definitely still needs some work. It really struggles with sharp turns and any significant rate of climb in terms of levelling off. Yeah, we're back on profile, so we need a vertical speed of around 1400 feet a minute to maintain the profile. It says VS minus 1400, and the speed just creeping up again there. So coming back once more on the thrust.
Thank you, monitor tower 118.
Still no auto-tuning yet on the ILS, but we'll leave it a little bit longer. We'll tune it up ourselves if needs be.
Proceed to Foxtrot, Exco 1,
And you can see our magenta marker is showing bang over the field at Belfast currently. Obviously we need to be level before that, so we'll keep an eye on that. That's through transition, so we'll set the altimeters. QNH is 1032. And 1032 is set and cross-checked. It's actually putting us a little bit high now with the extra change in altitude, so we'll just keep increasing our vertical speed for now. Make sure we get back on profile. Give the aircraft every opportunity to fly the ILS correctly. It's going to be the real test for today. We'll give it until about 20 miles to auto-tune. In fact it has now. We have 109.9 and that checks. So we'll centre up the heading bug once again. We'll arm the approach modes once we're about 20 miles out from Belfast. And just passing through 7,000 feet, showing 27 miles to run, so again we're actually a little bit on the low side now. Just keep coming in on the range on the ND, just to keep a good eye on what's going on. And at around 20 miles we'll start decelerating as well and configuring for the approach.
Air 774, good morning, land from which way left to me. Good morning, climb to 8 now, waiting for you.
So we'll start bringing the speed back so we can start extending the flaps. Come back to 210 knots initially. Again, just reducing the thrust, we shouldn't need to reduce our vertical speed. And we do have the localizer now, so we'll select nav 1, or loc 1 in this case. We'll arm the approach. And we'll see how the aircraft goes there.
774, wind 320 degrees, 12 knots, runway 28 left, clear for takeoff. Clear for takeoff 28 left, right,
And we are showing low on the glide slope as well, so we'll reduce our vertical speed a little bit more. Hopefully, if we can intercept the glide slope in the descent, that should give us every possible chance to actually allow the aircraft to fly the ILS correctly. Start taking some flap as soon as we can. The flap speed limit is 230 knots, so we're just coming below that now. Glide slope is white, so that's armed. The localizer is already capturing. Now we'll take flaps 1. You can already see the airport off in the distance at around our 11 o'clock. And we'll take flaps 8.
Good morning, climb 774 plus 2400 climb level 90 VT6 Alpha. Liner 774, Dublin, good day, identified. Climb flight level 12.
Just keep reducing that vertical speed. We don't want to level off if we can avoid it.
0. Climb level 120, Ryanair 774. Ryanair 774, turn right, direct rule up. Take the rule up, Ryanair 774.
So keeping a really good eye on the aircraft, making sure it's doing exactly what we want it to do. $14 miles to run on the ILS at the moment. Again, we're already visual with the field. So much for the 200-foot cloud base and conditions being right on the minima for the ILS. Get the speed coming back again to around 180 knots.
Crown Hotel, unit push start to provide and unit 978.
And again coming back on the thrust. Should intercept the glide slope very shortly. You can see that's just coming in.
We are about to land. Please remain seated until we have stopped.
Cabin crew have advised the passengers. And we'll take flaps 20 now. Coming up on the thrust to account for the extra drag from the flaps. Everything looking good on the profile. We've captured glide slope. So far the aircraft seems to be flying a reasonable flight path. Hopefully it will continue to do so. Fairly strong wind out from the right at the moment, as you can see, around 20 knots, so we are crabbing a little bit there to maintain the localizer, but it's doing a good job of that. A little bit of a dive there, hopefully that's going to roll right back off. Just coming off on 8 miles, so we'll take the gear down. Speed can come back to 160 knots. Flap limit speed for flaps 30 is 185, so we'll take flaps 30. And we need to be below 170 knots before we take flaps full. So again, the aircraft tracking the glide slope at the moment. We'll take flaps full. And again, coming up on the thrust to account for the extra drag. VREF is 125, so we'll set that. And we'll run the landing checklist. So flight attendants have been advised, passenger signs are on, thrust traversers are armed, landing gear is down, and the flaps are set for landing, so that's the landing checklist complete. So let the speed bleed all the way back to VREF. Just double check that is the correct VREF. Showing 125 knots. And 2 whites, 2 reds on the PAPI at the moment. See if the aircraft manages to maintain that. It does have a tendency to dip low at some point on the approach.
Station calling, I'll get the carrier wave only. It's Ryan at 725, good morning. 717 information, Belfast ready. 977, touchdown. Ryan 7256, there's a grid, runway 28 left, deep and 5 out departure, form 2270. Frequency airborne 120, that's 35.5. Keep that 1010, and your gear H now 978.
1000.
As checked, we are stable. MDA is 470, we need to keep a good eye on that because there's no auto call out. Again, so far the aircraft doing an excellent job of flying the ILS. It's just a shame that it can't consistently do that. And again, this is with a fairly significant crosswind as well, so you'd think if it can do it in these conditions, it would be able to do it in any condition. There's our obstacle that we mentioned for the arrival brief out on the left. We have the wind turbines there. Again, the aircraft just starting to dip low on the glide slope now, so that's probably a good time to do some flying. We'll disengage the autopilot.
500.
That's checked.
That's 256 re-evaporate, thank you. 230 minus 774. Yes, climb level 230 minus 774.
That's minimums, we'll continue.
Sync rate.
Always end up getting a sync rate in this aircraft, I don't know if that's just me.
100.
Right there, 774, contact Scottish 128.055, goodbye.
40.
28.055, hold it back
20.
9 and 774.
10.
So there's touchdown. Engage the spoilers. We'll start braking, we'll go full reverse and we'll come off at Bravo. Since we can. So cancelling the reverses. The jet certainly comes to a stop in a bit of a hurry if you want it to. I wasn't expecting to be able to make Bravo there.
Please remain seated until the aircraft has come to a complete stop.
That being said, I'm not used to flying quite such a light jet with such low approach speeds, so it does rather make sense. Anyway, vacating the runway, we'll get rid of the spoilers. Flaps can come up. Landing lights can come off. Strobes can come off. We'll get the APU fired up. It's going to be a very short taxi. Keep a little bit of thrust on, keep the aircraft moving. There goes the APU. So run the after-landing checklist. APU is coming on. Transponder will leave. Slats and flaps are coming up. Lights are set. And just the probe heats to come. We can get the engine anti-ice off as well now.
Direct lap motion, I'll get it one.
So we'll just find ourselves a vacant bay and we'll park up.
Julia, taxi left onto the Fox inner, onto the Foxes, Echo 1, full short from it, 34 and 28 left.
Looks like this stand on the left's clear, so we'll take that. The taxi light can come off. Aircraft not very keen to carry out the turn there. Having to slow down and use a little bit of brake. And we'll taxi straight ahead. Slow the aircraft down in anticipation of the stop. And we are stationary, park brake on. APU is online, so we'll shut down the engines. Seatbelts can come off, as can the beacon. And we'll carry out the shutdown checklist. So the parking brake is on, seatbelts are off, thrust levers are shut off, anti-ice is off, fuel pumps are off, beacon is off, noticeable steering can come off, and we'll just get the windshield heat off there as well. Cancel the master caution, and that is the shutdown checklist complete. So there you go guys, I hope that you did enjoy our trip out in the Aerosoft CRJ from Burning Blue Designs Farnborough over to Belfast. Once again, I really enjoyed my time out in the jet, and I have to say that loading via the performance menu using the passenger and baggage weights as opposed to a final zero fuel weight did seem to help with the aircraft's handling. That being said, we did still unfortunately experience a few peculiarities throughout the flight. And once again, the aircraft is really good, great fun to fly, but it really needs some work on the autopilot. Nonetheless, we did manage to make it from A to B in one piece. As always, I do hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you have any comments or questions for me, please leave them down in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. But for now, thanks very much, and I'll see you all again soon.